The morning of June 17, 2023, began like any other for British Airways Flight 762, a routine transatlantic journey from London Heathrow to John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York. The Boeing 777-300ER, a marvel of modern aviation, stood proudly on the tarmac, its sleek white fuselage gleaming under the pale English sunrise. The aircraft, registration GSTBL, was a workhorse of the British Airways fleet, having logged thousands of flight hours since its delivery in 2014. Its twin Rolls-Royce Trent 800 engines, each capable of producing over 90,000 pounds of thrust, were a testament to the engineering prowess that had made the 777 one of the safest and most reliable aircraft in the world. Passengers boarding the flight that morning had no reason to suspect that this journey would be anything other than ordinary. The crew, too, went about their pre-flight checks with the practiced ease of professionals who had done this hundreds of times before. The flight was fully booked, carrying 336 passengers and 16 crew members. Among them were business travelers, eager to close deals in the Big Apple, families embarking on long-awaited vacations, and students returning home after a semester abroad. The atmosphere in the cabin was one of quiet anticipation, the hum of conversation blending with the occasional chime of seatbelt signs and the muffled announcements from the flight deck. As the aircraft pushed back from the gate and taxied to the runway, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the sprawling Heathrow complex. The pilots, Captain James Harrington and First Officer Emily Carter, ran through their final checks, their voices calm and measured as they communicated with air traffic control. At 8:42 a.m. local time, Flight 762 was cleared for takeoff. The roar of the engines filled the cabin as the aircraft accelerated down the runway, its nose lifting gracefully into the air. Within minutes, the plane had climbed to its initial cruising altitude of 10,000 feet, the sprawling suburbs of London giving way to the patchwork quilt of the English countryside below. The flight attendants moved through the cabin, offering refreshments and ensuring that everyone was comfortable. Outside, the sky was a brilliant blue, the kind of perfect weather that pilots dream of. For the passengers, the flight was shaping up to be as uneventful as they had hoped. But unbeknownst to anyone on board, a catastrophic chain of events was about to unfold. At 9:07 a.m., as the aircraft climbed through 28,000 feet over the Bristol Channel, a loud metallic bang echoed through the cabin. Passengers near the right side of the plane reported seeing a bright flash, followed by a trail of smoke streaming from the No. 2 engine. In the flight deck, Captain Harrington and First Officer Carter were immediately alerted to a sudden loss of thrust in the right engine. Warning lights illuminated on the instrument panel, and the aircraft shuddered violently as the autopilot disengaged. Harrington took manual control, his hands gripping the yoke as he fought to stabilize the plane. The cockpit voice recorder would later capture his calm but urgent commands as he directed Carter to run through the engine failure checklist. The situation was dire. The right engine had suffered an uncontained failure, a rare and potentially catastrophic event in which engine components break apart and are ejected with enough force to damage the aircraft. In this case, shrapnel from the engine had punctured the fuselage, causing a rapid decompression. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling as the cabin pressure plummeted, and the temperature inside the plane dropped sharply. Passengers screamed. In panic, their voices drowned out by the deafening roar of wind rushing through the breach. Flight attendants, trained for such emergencies, moved quickly to assist those in need, their own fear masked by years of rigorous training. Outside, the once pristine sky was now marred by a trail of smoke and debris. The engine had disintegrated, its fan blades and turbine discs scattering across the sky like shards of glass. The aircraft, now flying on a single engine, began to lose altitude as Harrington and Carter worked to maintain control. The Bristol Channel stretched out below, its cold grey waters a stark reminder of the peril they were in. Air traffic controllers at London Centre, alerted to the emergency, cleared the airspace around Flight 762 and began coordinating with nearby airports for an emergency landing. The closest suitable runway was at Cardiff Airport in Wales, approximately 60 miles to the north. As the aircraft descended, the crew faced a new challenge. The damaged engine had caused a fuel leak, and the remaining engine was burning through its reserves at an alarming rate. Harrington knew that they had only one shot at landing the plane safely. He radioed Cardiff Airport, declaring an emergency and requesting immediate clearance to land. The airport's emergency response teams were scrambled, their vehicles lining the runway as they prepared for the worst. Inside the cabin, the mood was one of grim determination. Passengers clung to their seats, their faces pale with fear as the plane continued its descent. The flight attendants, their voices steady, instructed everyone to assume the brace position. At 9:23 a.m., Flight 762 made its final approach to Cardiff Airport. The landing gear was down, and the flaps were fully extended as Harrington guided the crippled aircraft toward the runway. The damaged engine continued to spew smoke, and the plane wobbled precariously as it neared the ground. For a moment, it seemed as though the aircraft might not make it, but then, with a jolt that shook the entire plane, the wheels touched down. The engines roared as Harrington applied reverse thrust, slowing the aircraft to a halt just short of the runways. Emergency vehicles surrounded the plane, their lights flashing as firefighters sprayed foam to prevent any potential fires. The passengers and crew evacuated quickly, sliding down the inflatable escape chutes and gathering on the tarmac. Many were in shock, their faces streaked with tears as they hugged one another and thanked the crew for their bravery. Miraculously, there were no serious injuries, a testament to the skill and professionalism of the flight crew and the robustness of the aircraft itself. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting its warm light over the scene, the passengers of British Airways Flight 762 knew that they had been given a second chance at life. But for Captain Harrington, First Officer Carter, and the rest of the crew, the ordeal was far from over. The investigation into what had caused the engine to fail was just beginning, and the answers they sought would reveal a story of engineering, human error, and the relentless pursuit of safety in the skies. The sun hung high over Cardiff Airport, its rays reflecting off the scattered debris and emergency vehicles that now dominated the tarmac. British Airways Flight 762 sat motionless, its right engine a mangled ruin, its fuselage scarred by the shrapnel that had torn through it mid-air. The passengers, now safely on the ground, were ushered into the terminal where medical teams and crisis counsellors awaited them. Blankets were handed out, hot drinks were poured, and the shock of what had just transpired began to settle in. For many, the reality of their narrow escape would take days, if not weeks, to fully process. But while the passengers grappled with their emotions, a different kind of intensity was unfolding elsewhere. Within hours of the emergency landing, a team of investigators from the Air Accidents Investigation Branch, AAIB, arrived at the scene. The AAIB, the UK's premier aviation accident investigation agency, was known for its meticulous approach to uncovering the causes of air incidents. Their presence was a clear indication of the seriousness of what had occurred. The investigators, clad in high-visibility jackets and armed with cameras, notebooks, and specialized equipment, began their work immediately. Their first task was to secure the aircraft and gather evidence before it could be disturbed. The runway was cordoned off, and the 777 was treated as a crime scene, though no crime had been committed yet. The focus of the investigation was the right engine, or what remained of it. The Rolls-Royce Trent 800, once a masterpiece of engineering, was now a twisted mass of metal and composite materials. The fan blades, designed to withstand immense forces, had shattered, and the turbine discs were fractured into jagged pieces. The engine casing, meant to contain any debris in the event of a failure, had been breached, allowing shrapnel to escape and strike the fuselage. This was an uncontained engine failure, one of the most dangerous scenarios in aviation. The investigators knew that understanding why it had happened would require a deep dive into the engine's history, its maintenance records, and the conditions it had faced during the flight. As the AAIB team worked, they were joined by representatives from Rolls-Royce, British Airways, and Boeing. Each party had a vested interest in the investigation, but their primary concern was ensuring that such an incident would never happen again. The Rolls-Royce engineers in particular were under intense scrutiny. The Trent 800 was a workhorse engine, powering not only the Boeing 777 but also other wide-body aircraft around the world. If a design flaw or manufacturing defect was to blame, the implications would be global. The engineers pored over the wreckage, collecting fragments and cataloguing them with painstaking precision. Every piece of metal, every bolt and washer would be analyzed in a laboratory to determine its role in the failure. Meanwhile, inside the terminal, the passengers and crew were being interviewed by AAIB investigators. Captain Harrington and First Officer Carter provided detailed accounts of the events, from the moment they heard the loud bang to the tense minutes that followed as they struggled to land the plane. Their professionalism under pressure was evident, and their actions were widely praised. But the investigators needed more than praise. They needed data. The flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, often referred to as the black boxes, were recovered from the aircraft and sent to the AAIB's headquarters in Farnborough for analysis. These devices would provide a second-by-second account of the flight, from engine performance to crew communications. As the investigation progressed, a picture began to emerge. Preliminary findings suggested that the engine failure had been caused by a fractured fan blade. The blade, made of titanium alloy, had broken off during the flight, striking other components and triggering a cascade of failures. But why had the blade fractured? The answer lay in the engine's maintenance history. Investigators discovered that the blade had been inspected just weeks before the incident as part of a routine maintenance check. However, further scrutiny revealed that the inspection might not have been thorough enough. Cracks in the blade, though small, had gone undetected. Over time, these cracks had grown, weakened by the stresses of repeated takeoffs and landings, until they finally gave way. The implications of this discovery were profound. If a routine inspection had failed to identify a critical flaw, what did that say about the maintenance practices of airlines and engine manufacturers? The AAIB expanded its investigation, reviewing maintenance records not only for Flight 762, but for other aircraft equipped with Trent 800 engines. They also examined the training and procedures of the maintenance crews responsible for inspecting the engines. It was a daunting task, but one that was essential to preventing future incidents. As the days turned into weeks, the investigation began to uncover broader issues within the aviation industry. The pressure to keep aircraft flying, combined with the complexity of modern engines, had created an environment where mistakes could and did happen. The AAIB's findings would eventually lead to a series of recommendations, from improved inspection techniques to enhanced training for maintenance personnel. But for the passengers and crew of Flight 762, the investigation was more than just a bureaucratic exercise. It was a quest for answers, a way to make sense of the terrifying ordeal they had endured. By the time the investigation concluded, the story of British Airways Flight 762 had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of the fragility of human technology and the importance of vigilance in the face of complexity. The aircraft itself, though damaged, was eventually repaired and returned to service, a testament to the resilience of modern aviation. But for those who had been on board that day, the memory of the engine exploding mid-air would linger, a stark reminder of how quickly the ordinary can become extraordinary and how close they had come to disaster. While the investigation into the engine failure of British Airways Flight 762 focused on the technical and mechanical aspects of the incident, the human stories that emerged in its aftermath were equally compelling. For the 336 passengers and 16 crew members on board, the events of June 17, 2023 were not just a case study in aviation safety, but a life-altering experience that would leave an indelible mark on their lives. In the days and weeks following the emergency landing at Cardiff Airport, the media descended on the story, capturing the raw emotions of those who had survived the ordeal. Their accounts painted a vivid picture of fear, courage, and the unbreakable human spirit. One of the most poignant stories was that of the Bennett family, a group of 5 from Manchester who had been travelling to New York for a long-awaited vacation. For Sarah and Mark Bennett, the trip was a chance to celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary and create lasting memories with their 3 children, aged 8, 12, and 15. The family had been seated in the middle of the cabin, near the right engine, when the explosion occurred. Sarah later described the moment as like being inside a thunderclap, the noise so loud that it momentarily deafened her. Mark, sitting by the window, had seen the flash of light and the trail of smoke, and instinctively reached for his children. As the cabin depressurized and oxygen masks dropped, the Bennetts held hands, their faces pale but determined. In the chaos that followed, Sarah recalled the calm voice of a flight attendant, urging them to brace for landing. "She was our anchor," Sarah said. "In that moment, she was the voice of hope." For 72-year-old Margaret Thompson, a retired schoolteacher from Edinburgh, the flight had been a journey to visit her daughter and grandchildren in New York. Seated near the front of the plane, Margaret had been reading a novel when the engine failed. The sudden jolt caused her to drop her book, and the ensuing chaos left her disoriented. Despite her age, Margaret remained remarkably composed, later attributing her calm demeanor to her years of teaching. "When you've managed a classroom of rowdy teenagers, you learn to stay calm under pressure," she joked. But beneath her humor was a deep gratitude for the crew's professionalism. "They saved our lives," she said simply. Among the passengers were also several business travelers, including 45-year-old James Whittaker, a financial analyst from London. James had been on his way to a high-stakes meeting in New York, his mind preoccupied with spreadsheets and presentations. The explosion shattered his focus, replacing it with a primal instinct to survive. James later described the experience as a wake-up call, a reminder of what truly mattered in life. "I spent so much time worrying about work, about money, about things that don't really matter," he said. "When you're staring death in the face, none of that counts. All that matters is the people you love." The crew of Flight 762 too became the focus of admiration and gratitude. Captain James Harrington and First Officer Emily Carter were hailed as heroes for their skillful handling of the emergency. Harrington, a veteran pilot with over 20 years of experience, had faced engine failures before, but never one as severe as this. His calm demeanor and decisive actions were credited with saving the lives of everyone on board. Carter, though less experienced, had proven herself equal to the challenge, her steady hands and quick thinking complementing Harrington's expertise. In the days following the incident, both pilots were inundated with messages of thanks from passengers and their families. "They were amazing," said one passenger. "We owe them everything." The flight attendants, often the unsung heroes of aviation emergencies, also received well-deserved recognition. Among them was 34-year-old Lisa Matthews, who had been Working in the rear galley when the engine failed. Despite the chaos, Lisa had remained focused, helping passengers don their oxygen masks and guiding them to safety. Her quick thinking and compassion were a source of comfort to many, including a young mother traveling alone with her infant. "Lisa was incredible," the mother later said. "She made sure my baby was safe, even when she must have been terrified herself." As the days passed, the passengers and crew of Flight 762 began to process what they had been through. For some, the experience brought a renewed appreciation for life. "I hug my kids a little tighter now," said Mark Bennett. "I don't take anything for granted." Others struggled with the psychological aftermath, grappling with anxiety and nightmares. Counseling services were made available to all those affected, and support groups sprang up, both online and in person, providing a space for survivors to share their stories and lean on one another. The incident also sparked a broader conversation about the human element of aviation. While the investigation focused on the technical causes of the engine failure, it was the people on board, the passengers, the crew, the emergency responders, who had turned a potential tragedy into a story of survival. Their courage, resilience, and compassion were a testament to the strength of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable danger, hope and humanity can prevail. As the weeks turned into months, the passengers and crew of Flight 762 went their separate ways, returning to their lives with a newfound perspective. For some, the experience became a defining moment, a catalyst for change. For others, it was a story to be told and retold, a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. And for the aviation industry, it was a lesson in the importance of not only technological innovation, but also the people who make it all possible. The story of British Airways Flight 762 was not just about an engine exploding mid-air. It was about the lives that were saved, the bonds that were forged, and the resilience that emerged in the face of adversity. The emergency landing of British Airways Flight 762 was not just a singular event. It sent shockwaves through the aviation industry, prompting a re-evaluation of safety protocols, maintenance practices, and the design of modern aircraft engines. In the months following the incident, regulators, manufacturers, and airlines around the world took a hard look at their operations, determined to prevent a similar catastrophe from occurring. The findings of the Air Accidents Investigation Branch, AAIB, served as a catalyst for change, leading to a series of reforms that would reshape the industry for years to come. One of the first areas to come under scrutiny was the maintenance and inspection of aircraft engines. The fractured fan blade that had caused the engine failure on Flight 762 had been inspected just weeks before the incident, yet the cracks that led to its failure had gone undetected. This revelation raised serious questions about the adequacy of existing inspection techniques. In response, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, and the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, in the United States issued new guidelines for the inspection of engine components. These guidelines mandated the use of advanced non-destructive testing methods, such as ultrasonic and eddy current inspections, which could detect even the smallest cracks or defects. Airlines were also required to increase the frequency of inspections for critical engine parts, particularly those subjected to high stress during flight. Rolls-Royce, the manufacturer of the Trent 800 engine, faced intense pressure to address the design flaws that had contributed to the failure. The company launched an internal review of its engineering processes, focusing on the materials and manufacturing techniques used in its engines. This review led to the development of a new generation of fan blades made from advanced composite materials, which were more resistant to fatigue and cracking. Rolls-Royce also implemented a more rigorous quality control process, with each engine component subjected to multiple inspections before being approved for use. These changes were not limited to the Trent 800. They were applied across the company's entire product line, ensuring that all engines met the highest standards of safety and reliability. The incident also highlighted the importance of crew training and preparedness. Captain James Harrington and First Officer Emily Carter had been widely praised for their handling of the emergency, but their success was due in large part to the extensive training they had received. In the wake of Flight 762, airlines around the world began to reassess their training programs, placing greater emphasis on scenarios involving engine failures and other critical situations. Simulators were updated to replicate the conditions of an uncontained engine failure, allowing pilots to practice their response in a controlled environment. Flight attendants, too, received additional training, with a focus on managing passenger panic and ensuring a swift evacuation in the event of an emergency. The role of technology in aviation safety also came under the spotlight. While modern aircraft are equipped with a wide array of sensors and monitoring systems, the investigation revealed that these systems had not been able to predict the engine failure on Flight 762. In response, Boeing and other aircraft manufacturers began developing new predictive maintenance technologies, using artificial intelligence and machine learning to analyze data from engines and other critical systems. These technologies could identify potential issues before they became serious problems, allowing airlines to address them proactively. For example, sensors embedded in engine components could monitor temperature, vibration, and stress levels in real time, sending alerts to maintenance crews if any anomalies were detected. The incident also had a profound impact on public perception of air travel. In the immediate aftermath, many passengers expressed anxiety about flying, particularly on aircraft equipped with Trent 800 engines. British Airways and other airlines worked to reassure the public, emphasizing the safety improvements that had been implemented and the rigorous testing that their aircraft underwent. Over time, confidence in air travel was restored, but the incident served as a reminder of the importance of transparency and communication in maintaining public trust. For the passengers and crew of Flight 762, the reforms that followed the incident were a source of comfort and validation. Many of them became advocates for aviation safety, sharing their stories to raise awareness and push for further improvements. Sarah Bennett, who had been traveling with her family, became involved in a campaign to improve emergency preparedness for passengers with young children. "I want to make sure that no family has to go through what we did," she said. Captain Harrington and First Officer Carter, meanwhile, used their experience to mentor younger pilots, emphasizing the importance of staying calm under pressure and trusting one's training. As the years passed, the legacy of British Airways Flight 762 continued to shape the aviation industry. The reforms that were implemented in its wake made air travel safer than ever before, but they also served as a reminder of the need for constant vigilance. The incident was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of collaboration, as regulators, manufacturers, airlines, and passengers came together to ensure that such a tragedy would never happen again. And while the memory of that day would always linger, it was overshadowed by the knowledge that something good had come from it, a renewed commitment to safety and a determination to learn from the past to protect the future. 5 years had passed since the harrowing events of British Airways Flight 762, and the aviation industry had undergone a transformation. The reforms sparked by the incident had become standard practice, and the lessons learned had been woven into the fabric of global aviation. The passengers and crew who had lived through that day had moved forward with their lives, but the experience remained a defining moment for many. As the anniversary of the emergency landing approached, a sense of reflection and gratitude permeated the air, a reminder of how far they had come and the resilience that had carried them through. Cardiff Airport, the site of the dramatic landing, had become a symbol of hope and survival. On the 5th anniversary, a small ceremony was held to commemorate the event. A plaque was unveiled near the runway, bearing the names of the passengers and crew of Flight 762. The inscription read, "In recognition of the courage, skill, and humanity that turned potential tragedy into a story of survival. May this serve as a reminder of the importance of safety, preparedness, and the unbreakable human spirit." The ceremony was attended by survivors, their families, and representatives from British Airways, Rolls-Royce, and the AAIB. For many, it was an emotional moment, a chance to honor the past while looking toward the future. Among those in attendance was Captain James Harrington, now retired from commercial aviation. Standing before the crowd, he spoke of the lessons he had learned from that day. "Flight 762 taught me that no matter how much you prepare, there will always be challenges you can't anticipate," he said. "But it also showed me the power of teamwork, of staying calm under pressure, and of trusting in the people around you. Those lessons have stayed with me, and I hope they stay with all of us." His words were met with applause, a testament to the respect and admiration he had earned. First Officer Emily Carter, now a captain herself, also shared her thoughts. "That day changed my life in ways I could never have imagined," she said. "It made me a better pilot, a better leader, and a better person. I'm proud of what we accomplished, but I'm even prouder of the changes that have come from it. We've made flying safer for everyone, and that's something we can all be proud of." Her speech resonated deeply with the audience, many of whom had been inspired by her courage and determination. The passengers, too, had found ways to turn their experience into something positive. Sarah and Mark Bennett, who had been traveling with their 3 children, had become advocates for family safety in aviation. They had worked with airlines to develop new protocols for assisting families during emergencies, ensuring that parents and children could stay together and receive the support they needed. "We wanted to make sure that no family would have to go through what we did," Sarah said. "It's been a long journey, but we've made a difference, and that means everything to us." Margaret Thompson, the retired schoolteacher, had written a book about her experience titled "Above the Clouds, A Story of Survival and Hope." The book, which became a bestseller, chronicled not only the events of Flight 762, but also the resilience and kindness she had witnessed in its aftermath. "That day showed me the best of humanity," she said. "From the crew who kept us safe to the strangers who held my hand, it was a reminder that we're all in this together. I wanted to share that message with the world." As the ceremony concluded, the attendees gathered for a group photo, their smiles a testament to the strength and unity that had emerged from tragedy. The plaque, now a permanent fixture at Cardiff Airport, served as a reminder of what they had overcome and the legacy they had created. For the aviation industry, it was a symbol of progress, a testament to the power of collaboration and innovation. For the passengers and crew, it was a tribute to their courage and a celebration of the lives they had rebuilt. In the years since the incident, air travel had become safer than ever before. The reforms implemented in the wake of Flight 762 had set a new standard for the industry, and the lessons learned had been shared around the world. Predictive maintenance technologies, advanced inspection techniques, and enhanced crew training had become the norm, ensuring that the risks of engine failures and other critical incidents were minimized. The Trent 800 engine, once the focus of scrutiny, had been redesigned and improved, becoming a model of reliability and safety. As the sun set over Cardiff Airport, casting a golden glow over the runway, The attendees of the ceremony reflected on the journey they had taken. The memory of that day would always be with them, a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment. But it was also a story of hope, of resilience, and of the power of human ingenuity to overcome even the greatest challenges. The legacy of British Airways Flight 762 was not just one of survival, but of transformation, a testament to the enduring spirit of those who had lived through it and the changes they had inspired. And so, as the final chapter of this story was written, it was not an ending, but a new beginning. The passengers, crew, and industry professionals who had been part of this journey had turned a moment of crisis into a catalyst for change, ensuring that the skies would remain safe for generations to come. The plaque at Cardiff Airport stood as a symbol of their triumph, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, there is always hope, always the possibility of a new dawn.